She was once the radiant heart of Hollywood, a name that meant laughter, charm, and unforgettable beauty, from the sweet and innocent Tony Simmons in Cactus Flower, the role that earned her an Oscar, to the resilient yet emotionally fragile Judy Benjamin in Private Benjamin, or the glamorous yet quietly broken Elise Elliott in The First Wives Club. Goldie Hawn walked with us through decades of laughter and longing. She gave the world joy and kept the pain to herself. At 80, that pain has surfaced in this video. You'll witness the turn no one saw coming. Before we begin on a scale from 0 to 100, how would you rate Goldie Hawn as an actress? Let us know in the comments. Your opinion truly matters well. If I knew you better, I'd show you my dog tags even before the lights of Hollywood ever touched her face. Goldie Hawn lived in a world of invisible shadows. Born on November 21st, 1945, in Washington, D.C., she arrived into a home filled with music rhythm and the quiet expectations of grace. Her mother, Laura, ran a dance school. Her father, Edward, played in a band. From the outside, it looked idyllic. A house humming with the sounds of creativity and structure. But within Goldie's heart, something entirely different was stirring. Something silent, heavy, and unknown. As a little girl growing up in Tacoma Park, Maryland, Goldie was often praised for her beauty and energy. Had wide, expressive eyes and a smile that seemed to brighten any room. But behind those eyes was a child filled with dread. She suffered from deep anxiety before she even knew the word for it. She felt it in her bones, in the breath she struggled to take in the silence of her own mind when the world around her was noisy with joy. She feared everything. The dark war, losing her parents, even happiness itself. She once admitted that she didn't believe she would live long enough to have her first kiss. Imagine that a child so consumed by fear that loved something she so deeply craved felt unreachable, while other children dreamed of becoming stars, princesses, astronauts. Goldie dreamed of feeling safe, of waking up without the weight on her chest, of not needing to pretend she was okay when asked. At just 11 years old, if she wanted to be famous, she answered with stunning clarity, "No, I just want to be happy." It wasn't the answer the world expected, but it was the only one that felt true. School did little to comfort her. She struggled with reading and was placed in the lowest group in her class. It was a quiet humiliation, one that confirmed the growing belief inside her that she was somehow not enough, that she was falling behind even when no one was chasing her. Her self-worth became a fragile thing, constantly threatened by comparison, judgment, and the quiet pressure to always be perfect. But then there was dance from the age of 3. Goldie began taking ballet lessons. Her feet were small, her balance unsure, but the moment music began to play, she felt something shift. Movement became her first language. Dance was not about performance. It was about freedom. It was the only space where she didn't feel watched or measured. It was a world with no words, no judgment, just rhythm. When she danced, the fear receded, if only for a while in those moments. She was weightless, free Paul. Her dream was never to be a movie star. It was to open a ballet school, to teach little girls how to feel the music, the way she did, to give them a space where fear couldn't follow them into the studio, where mirrors only reflected growth, not flaw, but the world had other plans by her teenage years. Goldie's natural charm and expressiveness couldn't be hidden. She began appearing in local theater, small performances, community events. Audiences adored her. They laughed, clapped, leaned in when she spoke, and though she smiled inside, she was still shaking the anxiety. Hadn't left. It had simply changed costumes now. It wore the face of stage fright, the pressure of attention, the impossible task of being everyone's sunshine. Her first trip to New York at 18 was supposed to be a triumph. She'd landed a job at the World's Fair as a dancer, but when she arrived, the friends she was supposed to stay with had disappeared. She was alone in a strange city, with no place to go for most people. This would be a moment of panic for Goldie. It was a familiar ache, the kind she'd known all her life. She didn't break. She didn't cry. She found her old dance teacher, asked for a place to sleep, and kept going. Quiet. Resilience was the muscle she'd always been building, behind every dazzling smile she would later show to the world. There lived a child who had once been terrified of waking up, a child who found courage in choreography, who built her identity on the dance floor, who tried so hard to make everyone happy because she couldn't find happiness for herself. Goldie's childhood was not marked by obvious trauma or dramatic loss. It was marked by the subtler ache of being misunderstood, of carrying a storm inside, while the world only saw sunshine, of craving stillness in a life that always seemed to be rushing toward noise and applause, even as success loomed on the horizon, even as she stepped closer to the cameras that would one day make her a star. Goldie Hawn remained at her core, that little girl who once whispered in the dark, "I just want to be happy," and that longing, quiet, constant, and profoundly human, would follow her for the rest of her life. In the United States, for instance, if you're having lunch in Chicago, it's breakfast time in California. She became a star, but never felt like one. Her rise to fame came almost accidentally when she was cast as Toni Simmons in the 1969 film Cactus Flower. Her portrayal of the sweet, wide-eyed young woman earned her an Academy Award. But even on that night of triumph, Goldie was nowhere to be found. She didn't attend the ceremony. She hadn't even watched it. When the news came, she thought it was a prank. "I wasn't even thinking about it." She later said, "I had already moved on to the outside world." She had arrived, but inside she felt lost. The Oscar wasn't validation. It was a mirror reflecting a version of herself. She didn't recognize what should have been the happiest moment of her career became a quiet turning point. Instead of feeling elated, she felt exposed. It was heartbreaking to be celebrated by millions, yet unable to celebrate herself. The pressure to live up to a title she didn't ask for weighed heavily. Goldie began experiencing panic attacks, more intense than ever before. The spotlight that made her famous also magnified every doubt she had ever carried. Every smile she offered to the world was a shield, and behind that shield she trembled by the age of 21. Goldie sought therapy, not a temporary fix, but a long, painful journey inward. For 8 years, she worked with a psychologist to understand the darkness she carried, to name it, to survive it. Fame hadn't healed her. It had only put a spotlight on her wounds. It was cruel in a quiet way. The more successful she became, the more alone she felt. She once said, "People think being a star means you're happy, but being a star just means you're watched." That haunting truth echoed through the 1970s and 1980s, even as she starred in hit after hit: Private Benjamin Overboard, Shampoo, The First Wives Club. Each role gave the world a reason to laugh, but for Goldie, each role was also a small confession, a window into the real woman behind the performance. In Private Benjamin, she played a pampered widow who joins the army to escape her old life. But underneath the comedy was a story about reinvention, about finding strength in chaos. It mirrored her own journey, a woman forced to rebuild herself over and over. Her nomination for Best Actress was not just a professional recognition, I don't think. So it was a validation of her fight to be seen for who she truly was in The First Wives Club. Her portrayal of Elise, a glamorous actress fighting irrelevance, was achingly personal. Goldie knew what it meant to be seen only for her youth and beauty. She poured her own heartbreak into that role, not as performance, but as catharsis. One critic called it her most layered role, but to Goldie, it was simply honest and overboard. She brought to life a woman, stripped of identity, a metaphor that resonated deeply with her private fears of being forgotten, of becoming invisible behind fame's fading glow and shampoo. She stood among giants, yet held her own with vulnerability and restraint. Her success wasn't just built on talent. It was built on endurance, on the quiet choice to keep showing up. Even when the joy faded, Hollywood celebrated her laughter, but rarely asked what it cost her to keep laughing. How tragic that the very industry that adored her rarely took time to understand her. Later, she stepped into producing not for power but for control. She co-founded a production company, not to chase prestige but to protect her voice. She knew that staying in front of the camera would eventually silence her, so she created space behind it, where she could shape her own narratives. Films like Protocol and House Sitter weren't just light comedies, they were statements of agency in a system that often reduced women to decoration. She never chased fame, she survived it. And that survival, quiet, raw, and real, is what made Goldie Hawn unforgettable. Nobody around here looks. Most of our customers are classical. But as the lights dimmed and the years went by, a different kind of pain emerged, one that no audience could see. Her world, once so vivid, began to blur. In recent years, Goldie confessed the unthinkable. I can barely see anything. Cataracts had slowly robbed her of her vision, forcing her to confront a cruel irony. Woman who had helped others see joy now struggled to see it all when she appeared at the 25 Oscars, standing beside Andrew Garfield. Millions watched as she squinted at the teleprompter and faltered. Then, with a tremble in her voice and a broken smile, she whispered, "I'm completely blind." Cataracts. The room froze. It wasn't just a medical condition. It was a moment that revealed how far she had traveled from the young, glittering starlet she once was. That one sentence shattered hearts. It was as if all the decades of laughter, beauty, and brightness were suddenly swallowed by a heartbreaking silence. But the coolness of age didn't stop there in the quiet of her home, far from the stage. Goldie reflected on more than fading eyesight. She mourned time not in abstract, but in painfully specific ways. I missed games, I missed moments, and those are things you can't get back. Her voice cracked when she said it. She wasn't talking about regrets in career, but the price she paid for fame time not spent watching her children grow, not holding them when they cried, not seeing them score that goal or whisper a secret only a mother would understand. She gave the world her light, but it cost her the most sacred kind of closeness. Her 2 marriages, first to Gus Trichonis, then to Bill Hudson, ended in quiet heartbreak. She rarely spoke ill of them, but the emotional imprint never faded. The split from Bill especially fractured more than just a home. Their children, Kate and Oliver, would later distance themselves from their father. Goldie bore the weight of that break-in. Silence, carrying guilt. She never voiced for years. She tried to keep the peace, but the damage lingered when she met Kurt Russell. It felt like salvation. Here was someone who saw her not as a star, but as a woman, bruised wise and worthy. Their love endured, but it too was tested. She once said, "People think, because we lasted. It was easy. It wasn't. It was daily work. They never married. Not because they didn't believe in forever, but because they had seen too clearly how paper vows could crumble. Even now, in moments of quiet doubt, she wonders if not marrying was another thing she might regret. Her relationship with her children became her anchor. But even there, she felt shadows. She missed much of their early years. She gave them everything she could, but sometimes she feared it wasn't enough. She watched them grow into their own fame, especially Kate, and sometimes wondered if they too felt the burden of being seen too soon. Beneath the glamour and warmth, Goldie battled an bold companion anxiety. It never truly left, even in her 70s and 80s. She described days where her chest tightened, her breath shortened, and her thoughts spiraled into quiet despair at times. Even leaving the house required enormous strength behind the camera. Reddy Glow was a woman holding herself together with meditation, deep breaths, and the will to keep going. And still, the world expected her to smile. Hollywood moved on as it always does. Roles became scarce. Phone calls stopped coming. The public shifted their gaze to younger stars for a woman once worshipped for her radiance. It was a silent vanishing. Goldie never complained, but the ache of being slowly erased never truly healed. She once confessed, "It's not the death of fame that hurts. It's the fading, the forgetting." And yet, even in the shadow of all this, she gave Goldie, poured herself into the mind-up. Foundation offering tools for children to understand their emotions, to fight the same invisible battles she had faced alone. She stood on stages not to promote films, but to teach resilience, breathing stillness behind the calm. She was still battling. But now she turned her scars into something sacred. She doesn't ask for sympathy, only to be remembered not just for the joy she gave, but for the quiet pain she carried, so others wouldn't have to. She is 80. Now, her steps are slower. Her vision is dim. Her world is smaller, quieter. But her light, though flickering, is still burning. A life like hers can't be measured in awards. It must be measured in the hearts. She healed the laughs she gave, the silence she endured. She was the sunshine of a generation. And now, even as the shadows stretch long, that warmth remains in every soul she touched. If her light ever touched you even once, let her know. Leave a word, leave a memory. Because even the strongest stars deserve to know they're still seen. And if one day her name fades from Marquee, if her films stop playing and the spotlight dims for good, let this truth remain. Goldie Hawn was never just an actress. She was a lighthouse for the lonely, a soft laugh in the dark, a reminder that even those who shine the brightest often carry the heaviest shadows. And when the applause ends, when the cameras are gone, the truest legacy is not what the world saw in her, but what she saw in the world, even as it disappeared from her view. That is the most beautiful heartbreak of all. I want to go out to lunch. I want to be normal. Like at 80. Goldie Hawn's days no longer revolve around scripts or studio calls, but rather the quiet rituals of peace. She wakes early not to prepare for a scene, but to sit with a cup of tea, and the soft light of morning pouring into her garden. Meditation has become her sanctuary, surrounded by flowers and birdsong. She breathes deeply, slowly, reconnecting with the self she had to silence so many times before her home is a world away from the chaos of Hollywood. It hums with simplicity, laughter of grandchildren, the rhythm of routine, and the tender conversations she shares with Kurt Russell. Their love untouched by marriage vows, yet bound by decades of choice, has aged like fine wine, quieter, deeper, more meaningful. They still tease, still hold hands on walks, still steal glances that speak volumes in a world that often confuses longevity with obligation. Theirs is a love born of daily recommitment, not to performance, but to presence. Family has become her anchor. Her relationship with Kate and Oliver is one of closeness and mutual admiration. They no longer need her as they once did, but they cherish her more deeply now than ever. Goldie doesn't run after moments anymore. She lets them come, whether it's watching Wyatt play with his own child or receiving a spontaneous phone call from Kate. Each exchange is a jewel polished by time and perspective. Her grandchildren bring a sparkle to her eyes that even the brightest stage lights couldn't replicate. They ask about her movies, not because they've seen them all, but because they want to know who she was. When the world was watching in their innocence, she sees the future, and through their questions, she reconnects with the past. But even in this piece, Goldie has not retired from purpose. Her Mind-Up Foundation continues to thrive now, in over 35 countries, impacting millions of children. The program's focus on emotional regulation, mindfulness, and resilience has made it a beacon of hope in a noisy, distracted world. What began as a mother's desire to help her child understand anxiety has grown into a global mission. Educators speak of its transformative power. Parents call it a lifeline. Children, the shy, the angry, the scared, find in Mind-Up a voice that tells them you matter. In these acts of service, Goldie has found her truest role not as a performer, but as a healer. She speaks not on stages of glamour, but at conferences for educators, panels on mental health, global forums. For change, she no longer plays characters, she reveals character. And in doing so, she's reminded the world of a truth it often forgets. Real beauty has nothing to prove her legacy. In Hollywood remains untouched Goldie Hawn, redefined what it meant to be a comedic leading lady, proving that beauty could be funny, that humor could be layered with pain, and that vulnerability could be power. She shattered the stereotype of the dumb blonde, turning it into a Trojan horse for wisdom, wit, and fierce independence. She paved the way for generations of women in entertainment, from her daughter, Kate Hudson, to countless actresses who cite her as an influence, comedians like Amy Schumer, actresses like Reese Witherspoon, and even filmmakers behind the camera have credited Goldie with opening doors simply by being unapologetically herself. Critics once said she wouldn't last, that her smile was too sweet, her voice too high, her roles too silly. But decades later, she is still here, still radiant, still relevant, still respected. Not because she conformed, but because she transformed the very idea of what a woman in Hollywood could be. The accolades have followed awards for acting, honors for philanthropy, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame shared poetically with Kurt. But the greatest award Goldie Hawn holds is less tangible. It's in the letters from fans who say her laughter saved them, in the silent nods from mothers who recognize the sacrifice in her story, in the teachers and therapists who use Mind Up every day, because it works. There was one letter she once shared quietly with a friend. It was from a woman who had lost her son to depression. The mother wrote, "We had no words, left only pain. But one night, we watched Private Benjamin together. And for the first time in months, we laughed. That laugh didn't save us, but it reminded us we were still alive." Goldie kept that letter in a drawer for years, not because it made her proud, but because it made her purposeful. She no longer seeks the spotlight, but the light she once gave off continues to guide. There are days now when she forgets where she put her glasses, when her knees ache, when her energy dips before sunset. But Goldie greets these days with grace aging. She once said, is not a punishment, it's a privilege. And so she moves through life, not as someone trying to hold on to the past, but as someone gently passing the torch through her work, her family, her presence. She teaches us how to grow old without growing bitter, how to lose the limelight, but keep the light within. If you ever laughed because of Goldie Hawn, if you ever felt seen or comforted or reminded to breathe, know that you are part of a legacy far greater than any filmography Goldie Hawn's life may have dimmed in the public eye, but her spirit remains a guiding star, steady, unwavering, and full of grace. And that in the end is the kind of fame that never fades. Ooh, thank you, and auditory delight when old age quietly arrives. It doesn't roar, it whispers, it slips in through trembling hands, faded laughter and memories that flicker like candlelight on a rainy night. Today, the world holds its breath with heavy hearts, learning of the quiet battle faced by Goldie Hawn, a woman who once lit up the world with every smile, every sparkle in her eye, every note of joy she gave so freely. Now the golden star dims, not because her light has faded, but because time, merciless and uninvited, has drawn the curtain slowly on a soul we were never ready to let go. Vision lost strength, waning, and silence. Where once there was song, it is more than tragic. It is an ache that echoes. How can it be that someone who once lifted so many is now quietly folding into the shadows of solitude? And yet even in this stillness she is radiant, because Goldie Hawn is more than an icon. She is a feeling, a moment in time, a joy that refuses to die. Her spirit lives in the laughter we once shared with her, and in the tears we now shed for her. If her smile ever brightened your day, if her films made your world softer for even a moment, leave a like, and in the comments tell us what she means to you. Let your words be the light she once gave us, reflected back with love.